Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Thanks to TriBooth, the best vocal booth for home or on-the-road voice recording. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO Stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, learner!
Here we go.
And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. Thanks to Austrian Audio, making passion heard. TriBooth, don't forget the code, TRIPAP 200 to get $200 off your TriBooth. And Passport VO, a collaboration between the Pro Audio Suite, that's us, and Centrance, the new dual interface for voiceover and podcasting, out soon. Get yours. Go to our website, theproaudiosuite.com, find the link, and get your order in. There's a handful left. Right. Now, self-noise. Everyone talks about it. What the hell is it? And how does it affect what we do?
It's like when you walk around going like,
I do that quite often. But,
you're on the telephone with someone and you're like, I can't hear you when you say. Oh, I have to hang up. Sorry, bye.
Well, I can tell you what products don't usually spec self-noise. And when you look at specifications, it's almost always USB mics. You ever notice that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's rare that you'll see an actual spec on a USB specific mic called self-noise.
Because they don't have to, because the output of the mic is after the preamp.
Right.
It's an irrelevant spec in terms of the output. Maybe the 5th gen Rode from the last podcast has it because it has an XLR output.
Well, they spec it. They do have it on it.
Large diaphragm.
Right. So they spec it at the XLR output, and it's extremely low. It's only 4 dB self-noise.
Yep.
Right. I guess there is no proper way to spec self-noise when the USB output is the output, because you can't differentiate the self-noise of the mic and the preamp of the mic from the AD.
And the A to D converter.
Right.
The whole system.
Right. Well, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it seems that Rode has set a benchmark for how quiet the self-noise of a mic can practically be. There are mics that are branded as being quieter. There's one called the Sub-Zero, made by Lewitt. So that one is, supposedly less than 0 dB, but in real world practice, it's more like 4 dB or 5 or something. So
I think it's like car companies and their 0 to 60 and top speed and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right. These are numbers that we use to measure things and say, whoa, look how fast it is. But in the real world, what's it like?
What does it really do?
And so like I'm using a mic right now, and granted, I am not in a studio. I'm not in an ultra low noise environment. I'm in my basement of my parents' house. It's pretty quiet right now.
That's where you ended up, man.
Yeah, that's where, in the end, this is where...
In the end, that's where you ended up.
Yeah, he got in trouble today. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a naughty boy.
And I'm talking into a mic that, on paper, has a 16 dB self-noise, which happens to be the same figure as the 41.6. So the question is the self-noise this mic is emitting right now in any way noticeable? Do you notice it above the noise of your headphone monitors and your other amplifiers? Do you notice the self-noise of this
your
mic?
Kids screaming in the background?
Well, I don't have any kids. I'm asking you guys, not the listeners, although the listeners do.
Right.
What do you guys hear?
No, and it's also our listening environment too that's clouding all that.
Exactly.
George's point. And so it really doesn't actually make a huge difference. And what makes sometimes a bigger difference isn't how much the self-noise is, but actually what's its particular sound. Is the energy more focused on the high frequencies? Does it hiss? Does it whine? Is it a very smooth, broad, just blanket that's kind of almost pleasing? You could almost have good noise.
Yeah.
You can just consider it dither.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's so many characteristics of noise. Some broadband noises actually have a name, like white noise, pink noise, brown noise. I don't know the technical differences between them, but I know they all have a different sort of
It's
weighting.
Equal power or equal energy.
Got it, yeah.
And so pink noise has it jumps around more. The meters jump more, and it has a different distribution of the energy between the high and low frequencies. White noise is much more consistent and what people are more used to when they think of snow on a TV.
And how about brown noise? Is that another weighting?
There might be something, I don't know.
I've heard of it. Is that like a loudness weighting? Like what's a Fletcher-Munson curve?
So the Fletcher-Munson curve is just that at different volumes, your ears are better or worse at hearing high and low frequencies.
Right.
So the loudness button on your amp is like the inverse Fletcher-Munson curve, so that it sort of makes quiet things sound loud. It's the smiley face EQ that we all like,
Right. Brown.
I don't like.
I'm hearing that brown noise is actually the bassiest, according to some, and the most soothing. So.
It sounds like a marketing turn. Yeah.
Depends how low it is. Yeah.
It'll be the new spec on the microphone, like.
Well, there was brown noise that was a weapon.
Brown noise, 16 decibels.
Mm-hmm. There's also green noise I've found. But I guess the question is like, when does a mic become too noisy? Like, when is it
depends on the application.
Yeah, like when does it clearly stand out? Let's just say in the context of voiceover, when does it become too noisy? Well, it has a lot to do with how much gain you have to apply to it, right?
The volume that you're working at in the first place. And also, if you get the right preamp setting on your preamp, you're going to amplify less of that noise if you have to increase the gain later. Because once you set your level, all the noise and everything that's in that level goes up and down when you raise the volume. So you want to set your initial ratio between your noise and your voice to be the biggest ratio possible so that the voice is really way above the noise.
Is there any mics that when you think of, I can't use that for voiceover, it's too noisy? Do we dare call out any brands or models?
Well, it's funny you should say that because there was one, and it wasn't too noisy for voiceover, but it was audibly, you could hear it. And that's my Microtech Gefell, the 92.1S, which is the tube mic. And, you can hear there is a bit of noise in there. I'm actually trying to find some stats on it. I can't find anywhere.
I'll look on recordinghacks.com in their mic database.
Yeah, I just had a look there and I couldn't see it. Oh, here we go. Noise level. Wow. Okay. Noise level is, it says 25 dB or 15 dBA.
Yeah. So A is the weighting of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the Rode measured in A weighted, or is it just not the Rode, but the earthwork?
They don't always specify that, do they?
Sometimes they decide to be confusing about it. Yeah.
They won't put A or it's going to be A or C, right?
Yep.
Explain really quickly the difference between those two.
I'm not good at this, but it's the weighting based on the frequency, as I believe. It's a little bit like the Fletcher-Munson curve, but
the C, I think, is how we hear sound.
Yeah.
And A is sort of on an energy level, more linear. That's my understanding.
Well, just to give you an idea, this microphone, the OC18 from Austrian Audio, which is what I'm on now, that has a noise level of 9 dBA in comparison with the Microtech, which has 15 dBA.
Yeah, A weighting is more like the human hearing.
And that's interesting, right? Because on paper or on specs, your Microtech Gefell is actually slightly quieter than this mic I'm using right now. But listening to this microphone, would you categorize this mic as noisy? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to isolate the thing to hear it, but...
it doesn't sound that noisy. I mean, right now we're not picking anything. We're going through a lot of stuff, though.
You guys all muted your own mic chain. I don't know if you can, but what do you hear?
I got too much noise here on my own.
Yeah, I can mute.
Well, they do list it as A-weighted. So on the Earthworks Ethos specs, it's 16 dB SPL A-weighted. That's what it says.
So what's the Gefell A-weighted?
15.
So they're pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
And the A-weighting, right? And the A-weighting is basically human hearing at low levels. C-weighting is for things at high level, the noise, as you will hear it. So it's the two ends of the Fletcher-Munson curve in terms of loud and not loud. Z-weighting.
Oh, I never heard that.
Is flat frequency response, 10 to 20K, plus or minus 1.5. This response replaces the older linear or unweighted response, as these did not define the frequency range over which the meter would be linear.
Crazy.
So Z-weighting is like basically flat.
Well, it's interesting comparing the specs. If you're looking at mic specs on paper, this $350 Earthworks blows the Gefell out of the water in every possible way, right? First of all, it's 20 to 30 kilohertz frequency response, right? It's super cardioid. It has a peak acoustic input of, get this, 145 dB.
Damn.
Wow.
Before clipping, right? It has no pad switch. Obviously, it doesn't need one. And it's 16 dB self-weighted, right? Or self-noise. And you look at the other mic, the max SPL of the Gefell is 118 dB.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful what you mic that with that mic.
Yeah.
But it's just incredible that modern, because that would be, is that considered a vintage mic?
Well, it would be vintage, and it's also, I mean, you can still buy them near the Gefell. The M92.1, and you can either get the S. There's also the UM92.1, which is the multi-pattern one. Mine's just a fixed cardioid. But I think the reason that it has a lower SPL is because the diaphragm in the Gefell is the old M7, which...
And is that a plastic
came out
diaphragm?
Of the U47. Yeah, the U47.
So what tube is in this thing? Because that'll tell us like...
It's the EF86.
Okay, so it's sort of like and it's an EF86 with an M7 capsule.
Yeah.
Okay, so that thing is like halfway a U47 and halfway a U67.
Correct. Yeah.
It's like the EF80, and I think the other mic that used the EF86 might have been the bottle, which was like the 5 something, but
the CV564, CVM564.
Yes.
Or CMV564, I think it's called.
That's a pretty sweet mic, I bet, that Gefell, man.
Oh, it's a beautiful mic. Yeah. I mean, the M7, and then the thing about the M7 capsule in that Gefell is because Gefell, during the war, when Neumann moved out of Berlin and went to Gefell, when it was being bombed, all the machinery went across there. So when they went back to Berlin after the war, a lot of the machine stuff stayed in Gefell. And in fact, the original machining for tooling up the M7 capsules and stuff is still in Gefell, and they still use it today to make those M7 capsules.
Right, because it was the split. But that ended up in East Germany for a while, right? Like it was like the communist.
Yeah, well, that's what happened, yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't blow it all up.
So...
But that's the is it a Mylar capsule or is it
is it Mylar? I'm not 100. No, I don't think it is Mylar.
I mean, it's funny because it's like you do and you don't want a Mylar capsule. It's like you do if you want to be a purist about it, but if you want it to wear out and fuck up one day, then get a Mylar capsule.
Yeah, well, it's a PVC capsule.
PVC, right?
Yeah.
So I think PVC's the new one because the Mylar was the old one, and the Mylar would somehow wear out, I believe.
I think, the other Gefell I've got has got the Mylar capsule.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still using it.
Well, I know because the purists are like, that's
PVC.
the real capsule. It's sort of like the 414 with the brass capsule. But the brass isn't as, like the Mylar, I believe, has a specific issue with those things. They just go bad, I believe. They just deteriorate, I don't know the nature of Mylar, but I think they switched it to PVC or some other material that didn't... break down in the same way, but then all the purists went like, oh my God, it's not an M7. It's not an original M7 or whatever.
Gonna have to do a bit of Googling on the old Wikipedia, I think, to find out what the story is. But anyway, that's the basic history of the Gefell.
Well, I know the mics that I've heard over the years that stood out as noisy to me. One was like the first generation of the condenser mic that Focusrite was bundling with the Scarlett. They had a very inexpensive, starter kit with a condenser mic bundled with a Scarlett. Whenever I heard that, I was like, yikes, that's not going to work. Got to replace that mic. It was quite audibly noisy. Then a few people, have had the same kit, and I'm like, wow, that sounds good. And it turns out they did a revision on it, and they improved it. So I guess the newer kit has a better mic, and it's no longer like a thing where the hiss is like, oof. Another one was the 2020 USB, the original 2020 USB by AT. That one to me was always a pretty pronounced soft noise. Like it was just like, you gotta upgrade that thing, nice for podcasting or starting out as a, as a beginner learning tool. But other than that, forget it. Noisy, too noisy. But I can't think of too many other mics that are used on any regular basis where noise of the self noise of the mic makes it a problem. At least a problem before the room tone itself is actually the problem. Their environment, the background noise of the space. That is what gets in the way. It would
only be if you were like recording like flies eating and
ASMR.
And it's like certain uses you're going to want something that has exceptionally low self noise because you're going to be running the preamp really hot and you're going to be digging for gain. I mean, even a talent whispering at some moment, you're still pushing enough. You're still easily getting to -20, and then you can still gain it up in your preamp if you have one. So I think it's fringe to need, those types of mics that have super quiet, low enough self noise is good enough. I mean, it used to be like, it's below the tape.
Below the
Who
tape.
cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tape noise is higher,
Yeah, I've even heard two tube mics that have different self-noise characteristics. Like years ago at the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab at SAG Foundation, we had two, and they probably still do actually, have two Manley cardioid reference or reference cardioid, whatever they call that mic. One of them was brand new, donated to us by Ivana, and the other one was donated by Bo Weaver. So the one from Bo had quite a few years on it, right? And the one from Manley was brand new. And I remember putting up the Manley and putting up Bo's, and the newly donated Manley was quite a bit noisier, like in an audible way
than the
older one. And I was like, what is going on, right? And I took the bodies of the mics apart, and you could see that there were some differences in there, And they were forced to change the design or they chose to change the design. And I don't know the story on it, but I was really taken aback. I was surprised to hear what I thought it was kind of an unacceptable amount of self-noise from the newer one, where you would think it'd be the aged one, the older one. That would have been the noisier one. It was a very strange thing. It stands out in memory. It's been a long time, but I still remember that. And I think I have pictures of the two mics as well. I have to look.
I think one of the things about like low self noise on a microphone is that most microphones, you plug them in and you hear all this stuff in already such detail that your mind forgives the noise. It's like you're just like, wow, holy cow. And you don't realize a really clean mic until you hear one and you've been able to sort of remember what one sounds like over the other, or you're literally have them in an A/B situation. And it is a big difference. It can make things sound like that much more clean and good, but it never stops a recording from happening. And I think mics with surprisingly high noise, clearly up to, 25 on that Cafell? Because I don't think anybody's going to be like, that Cafell is terrible.
No, they won't. No, because you hear other things.
Yeah. What do they say?
Right.
No one's going to kick it out of bed for eating crackers.
Yeah.
You're right. There you go.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite
With thanks to Tribooth.
and Austrian Audio. Recorded using Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging.
With tech support from George the Tech Whittam.
Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website.
theproaudiosuite.com.